Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the vodcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern, and we're here to talk again about a very favourite topic of ours, aren't we?
Hello FiST Chat fans, the PC is dead, long live the digital hub.
Yeah, absolutely. iCloud or any sort of cloud service as it stands. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. Obviously, we'll kick off with the new iPad because, you know, we don't want to be numbering these things anymore.
No, that's right.
I think it's safe to say, you know, we've talked about iPads before and where they sit. This one is probably doable, I think, for me. I don't know if it's doable for you, but I think...
Are we lining up, Ben? With everyone else out in FiST Chat land, are we lining up?
Absolutely. As a content consumption device, now with that Retina display screen, it's hard to argue against that sort of thing, because one of the big issues that I had as far as the iPad was concerned, that if I was going to be reading on it or looking at photos or even playing around with the apps, I just wanted to have that high resolution screen. I didn't want to be able to, you know, see pixels. Anytime I picked up an iPad 2, for example, I'd see, you know, little blocks around the bits of text. I know I'm a bit fussy with that sort of thing. That just comes from years of looking at editing pixels on screens for film, so I know where to look for them. So, but it looks pretty good. If that for that feature alone, I think they didn't even need to do a couple of the other things they did, but just on that alone, that almost makes it viable.
Well, I think, you know, technology's now got to a point, and, you know, we've caught up mentally, and I guess the operating systems have caught up to the capacity of what you can do with a tablet, whether it's an iPad or even an Android model. And, you know, we're now accepting that there's content available for these devices in ways that weren't 2 years ago. So it is the right time. And I think, you know, the capacity of something like the iPad now with its new displays, you say, upgraded cameras and dictation with Siri, even though you can't search with Siri, but you can still, do FiST Chat by voice like I do,
yep.
or whatever your blog might be out there if you're a blogger. I think it's time.
Well, I think maybe sometime soon, maybe we'll do we'll have you beamed in over an iPad instead of a MacBook as you are now.
That might be only a matter of weeks, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of other things to point out. They've got 4G LTE built in now. I don't know if I would never use that because I don't foresee myself taking an iPad around anywhere other than to other people's houses.
Yeah, exactly. It's their Wi-Fi, Ben. Why would you pay for your own?
Yeah, exactly right. I figure I've got a phone that's connected with 3G, and which is in effect the slower version of 4G. But if I've got that service on a phone, I don't think I need to then pay for another service to have it on an iPad.
Well, you're hardly going to be wandering around town with an iPad trying to use it like a phone. So, I mean, you know, an iPad, while it's mobile and portable, it is a home device. It's in the office where you've got Wi-Fi. It's at home where you've got Wi-Fi. I don't really, and I've never seen any sense in, buying another phone plan so you can use your iPad at a cafe that should be providing you with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's that type of device, but there may be a scenario where there might be, say, a person is in a place where they don't have access to that thing, and that's where it might make sense for them.
Well, this is still the major weakness with the iPad is there's no USB port, so you can't stick in a wireless dongle. You know, the Android systems have that, so it's really, you know, and of course, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in Australia, a lot of the mobile carriers don't like you to use your phone as a wireless point. So I think, you know, there really should be some pressure put on the carriers.
And I think in the case of us in Australia, I'm not sure how much coverage 4G has anyway.
Well, we're actually running a different 4G system. So the
there you go.
new iPad's 4G won't even work in Australia.
Oh, well, that solves the problem quick smart right there.
Samsung tablet, anyone?
We'll see how that goes. Now, just a couple of amusing things I did note in the Apple keynote about this. People shooting 1080p video with the iPad seemed a little hokey to me, just someone, going like this with the...
I've seen it in restaurants, Ben. It's awful. Please don't do it.
Although someone did... I did hear a possible scenario, and as filmmakers, we could probably appreciate this. The idea that if you're going out on a location scout or you're on a set somewhere, you just take your iPad with you and you actually shoot a mock-up or, sort of like you shoot the storyboard on set with this. And thanks to iMovie being part of iPad, you can edit it right on the spot and see how it goes.
That's right. Probably include footnotes, as well, and tag that all back to a script. Look, I think that is where the beauty of these mobile devices are, especially, a tablet size device that you can actually incorporate into work. And I think more so now we're being able to do these things. With the original iPads, it probably wasn't even a lack of functionality or resolution. It was more the fact that we hadn't learnt ways or worked out ways that we wanted to use the iPad. People have now been using the iPad since iPad 1 and realised that we need to do things that are creative or maybe we should call them productive in a typical work sense.
Yeah.
And those features are now being incorporated. So, whether it's a new iPad or a tablet of another kind, I think the next 3 or 4 years now, there'll be enough creativity on your tablet. And I think, unless you are editing or using Photoshop or you're a graphic designer or a filmmaker, I don't really know you're even going to need an iPad desktop anymore, which is sad as far as I'm concerned. iMac desktop anymore. Sad.
No, well, we'll have to wait and see how it goes because that's, like you said, that's like a lot of precision type work that you still can't... But the thing is... Apple just released iPhoto specifically for the iPad and iPhone. I had a bit of a play around on the phone, and as a touch-based photo editing app, it offers a lot of interesting possibilities. It's still a version 1.0 piece of software, so I'm sure there's more that they can include in there. But,
how do you go editing on a screen that big, Ben?
Well, it's a little difficult, I must say. That's why I think when I get the iPad, I'll probably have a better go at testing it out. But it just gives you that option that you can do very simple photo editing and even slightly more complex stuff just, with your multi-touch gestures, which is quite good. It's quite interesting. Just one other thing as far as use is education-wise. I think we've talked about education before. Do you think this new iPad's going to add a lot to schooling?
Well, I think now it just comes back to the content. So I think, like anything we see in these tech cycles, where something's created, and in the olden days it used to be a new CPU that was faster and it meant you could, play faster games or, have access to, a more intensive, piece of software. And I think, now after a couple of years of iPad, people have worked out how they want to use it. The apps are there for you to use them. The iPad's fast enough, got the best resolution, all those sorts of things. So I think now what we'll see is an explosion in education over the next couple of years as that content comes online.
And just finally, before we move on to a couple of other things, Siri's missing from the iPad. But, you won't miss her because, you carry around with her with you all the time. But they've put a dictation app on there, which is sort of based on Siri in the sense that it's probably using similar sort of algorithms to take your voice down. What do you think of that?
Well, that's what I was alluding to before. I sometimes write my FiST chat blog by just using notes on my iPhone, and that uses a Siri dictation device. So I imagine it'll just be that portion of Siri. It just won't have the search function.
Yeah. Do you think it's something missing from the iPad, or was it necessary to put it on there at all? Do you think?
I tell you what, Ben, if you think it's hokey trying to shoot high-definition video with an iPad, what about talking to it? Yeah, can you imagine anyone trying to use it as a phone? Some things are just best left alone. I think what it really does engender, and it's probably good in that it forces people to use the dictation device and not be not be forced to use a keyboard. I find it very good with my phone. Obviously, you always want to come back and touch it up with a bit of typing.
Yeah.
That's sort of finer control. But for getting your thoughts down, it's very accurate and it's very, very useful.
Yeah. Cool, let's move on. Mountain Lion, the new version of OS 10 was announced quite a while ago now, but it was a bit of a surprise because nobody saw it coming from the sound of it. And it seems they've now put OS 10 updates back on a yearly schedule, whereas they seem to slip to, say, once every 2 years for a little while there. And it seems to be in response to Windows 8's impending launch this year, it would seem. Although obviously Apple wouldn't spin it that way because
no, they wouldn't.
But I had a look at the Mountain Lion page on Apple, and there isn't really anything there that sort of jumps out as being anything special, other than they're porting a lot of iOS apps into Mountain Lion.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Ben. I mean, all they're trying to do is turn my iMac into a bloody non-touch screen iPad.
Yeah, exactly. So I looked at it and I thought, well, obviously they're moving closer and closer to the point where it's going to be irrelevant which device you're using.
Yeah.
Whatever content you started on one device, you'll be able to pick up on another device, and that's obviously where iCloud comes into it.
And also the iTunes Store or the App Store. I mean, that's really where it's going. They don't want you buying software from anywhere else except out of the cloud, out of Apple's store. Exactly. And that's how they're going to do it.
And they are doing it.
They are doing it. Yeah,
well.
They are.
Well, I mean, they've got 25 billion apps, I think, now. Some lucky guy in China got I don't know if it was some sort of gift card from the App Store because they downloaded. They were the lucky person who did that.
Sadly, I've started downloading and paying for apps now too. It's tragic, but I have.
Oh no, we don't want to hear that. A couple of things though. I do like the idea of AirPlay that they're going to put into the Macs now. It's a great feature on iOS devices, but having the ability to just put your screen on a TV, if you've got an Apple TV, stream it straight. You can see cables are going out the window now. You're not going to need them. And it's just a fantastic feature to have, even though it's sort of a no-brainer, really.
Well, the interesting thing about this is Samsung's already doing this successfully with their televisions and their tablets. And I've got to say, I think Samsung are really making up a lot of ground. And they're showing they must be a very innovative and together company, because no one else has been able to do it. And Sony, I think, has just been left for dead in all of this.
Yeah, they got hacked, so they just couldn't stand back up, maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
I think Samsung will be where Sony was.
Yeah.
Probably already are. I don't know what Sony's going to do.
No, well, they'll hang in there, I'm sure, until they don't hang in there anymore.
Until Samsung buys them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good to have at least a couple of other companies doing this. You can't really have Apple just sort of hogging the whole thing as well.
No, well, absolutely. And that'll probably bring us along to Microsoft now in making a big play to come back as the big, bad, dominant force they used to be.
Well, the thing is, it was suggested that for quite a while Microsoft had no real competition, and that was the reason why they went into a bit of a slump, because no one was really sort of challenging their dominance, and then you get things like Vista coming out.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, you get Windows 8 coming out, and it's really got a lot of people interested in Windows again. And the Metro style interface, I've had a play with the Windows 8 consumer preview, and you can definitely see the Metro interface is going to work fantastic on tablets. And it will, if they can get the hardware working, they can get the price points right, they might actually have a real decent shot at the iPad. I don't think this is going to be a case of, like the iPod, where nobody made another one that was any good. If the other guys can get their act together and get the Windows stuff happening, they might actually have something decent happening there.
I completely agree. Actually, the interesting comparison there with the iPod, no one ever came up with an interface that was as simple or as effective as the iPod. I think we've seen now that, the tablets are actually quite good across the board. You may not. I mean, generally, my experience with Android is it's not as slick as the iOS for iPad. But when you actually have a look at what the Windows experience will provide across phones, across tablets, and even in terms of touch computing, because I think they might actually get the jump on Apple with some touchscreen desktops.
Yeah.
That's Windows 7 has had the capacity. They never built in the interface for you to access it through Windows 7, but it has had the capacity for touchscreen computing. So this is a big move by Microsoft, and if there are some manufacturers who get behind them with touch screens and they may even get the jump on the iMac. I mean, who knows what Apple's plans really are for the iMac in the future anyway.
And we're also at that critical juncture in terms of how is Apple going to fare without Steve Jobs at the helm? We still don't know yet, because the products that are coming out probably still have Steve's, sort of mark on them. For example, the iPad had the marketing term resolutionary applied to it, and the argument was, do you think Steve would have allowed that one to go through? So it's interesting to see.
It's a very good question.
It's not too bad. I guess it highlights what the iPad's about, but still, it's quite corny to say the least. Just finally on Windows 8, I noticed the desktop's still there, so the business and enterprise customers will be happy because it doesn't look any different to Windows 7, except for the omission of the Start button.
Why do they do that, Ben?
And you have to flick back to the Metro screen, and it's just this really bizarre sort of Frankenstein type arrangement where you flick. It almost feels like you're flicking between two different computers or two different operating systems. Whether they put the orb back in and sort of give you an option maybe to start with the desktop if that's the way you want it, or just have the Metro side of things, you'd think they would do that, because that's the whole point of why they've got these two different systems.
This reminds me of Classic and 10.1 all over again. There are a few features on the Puma 10.1 Mac OS when it came out, 10 years ago now, that they just jumbled around, and they were the really good features from System 9, which they'd developed, and they were backed by 10.2. So,
so maybe Windows 8.5 will put all of these things back in or something.
I would be very surprised if the Start button doesn't come back. This searching for it by hovering around in the corner of the screen is just that's crazy talk, Microsoft. Just give us the button back.
Exactly right. Okay, we might have to finish it up there. Thanks again, Steve, for the chat. That was always good. We always love talking about technology, particularly Apple stuff, and of course Microsoft as well. Things are heating up, and we'll come back to it when a lot of these things get launched. That's it for this episode. We're actually going to be taking a break for about a month. I've got some travel commitments. So I'm going to be indisposed for about a month, so unfortunately we can't do the chat. We'll be back around mid-April, but in the meantime we're going to be posting some links to some of our old episodes, some highlighted episodes, so hopefully you'll tune in and check us out when we were a lot younger than what we are now.
Yeah, that's right. A lot less stressed as well. And feel free to tweet, leave comments, anything at all while we're on leave. We'll get back to you, and we'll probably even make some new episodes and changes if you've got any good ideas. Absolutely.
Tweet us with any suggestions you might have, or Facebook us. It'll be great to hear from you. So don't forget our website, www.fistchat.com. Get our links there. You'll get this video and many others there as well. We'll hopefully have some blogs as well just before we go off on the break as well. So until, I guess, a month's time now, we'll catch you then.